So, all right, this is done now. Okay, so we are on the stage where every team has registered, and every team has done almost the design part. So we here will be discussing the major problems faced by the teams, their solutions, how they tackle the problems, how basically they come up with a vehicle that successfully ran till endurance, the 4 hours endurance. Now there are many changes in the rule book from the previous year's rule books, and this year the endurance has been divided into 2 rounds, and moreover, the aim of the event is a little changed this year. So if you have seen last year's competition, or I mean any season before last year, so the endurance was used to be 4 hours first of all. Then now this year we have divided it into 2 rounds, one pre-endurance and one endurance round. So the total time for the endurance is still 4 hours endurance, but the round number of rounds are 2. So just first of all, we need to list down all the aims we want to make our vehicle look like this. If I show you my home screen, so you'll be able to see a concept sketch. So this is my imagination, or this is somebody's imagination, like how exactly I want my vehicle to look like. Then after that comes the engineering part. First of all, we want to visualize how do we want our vehicle to look like. I mean, uh, are you willing to just get any inspiration from anything, any existing design, or whatsoever can be your inspiration? But first of all, you need to just draw some rough sketches or some reference sketches and refine them, and just finalize that, okay, this is how something similar to my vehicle. Okay, so if you see, we have removed everything from the vehicle, and this engine compartment, if I'll be able to show you the engine, yes, the engine is kept over here, and the dimensions were taken after we decided the look of the vehicle. So this is something like, okay, we design first and then we manufacture according to the design. And there is one more process, that we decide the manufacturing processes first and then we design according to that. So these both are, related to your aims. Like first of all, there is a rule book to follow. The rule book says, okay, this wheelbase and track width relation has to be maintained like this. So if we see the rule book and go to the technical part, the rule book says the wheelbase of the vehicle cannot be less than 40 inches. And this is about the wheelbase, and the smaller track must be at least 80% of the wheelbase. Smaller track, front or rear, doesn't matter. The whichever is the smaller track should be 80% of the wheelbase. So this is one criteria for you to fulfill. Suppose you have designed, or you have imagined a design, you have made a sketch, and that doesn't fulfill this requirement, that comes later. First of all, you have to design your imagination into a sketch or something, like physically you can feel it. You can imagine that, okay, this is how my vehicle will look like. After that comes the engineering part. All right, so then comes the vehicle maximum vehicle dimension, the ground clearance, center of gravity, and all the components, the installation of the components, that comes later. So first of all, we just see, okay, this is how the first iteration I'm talking about, this we just see, okay, this is how my vehicle will look like. and I'll now start taking dimensions one by one. When I convert my sketch into, I want to convert my sketch into, the design part. I will now start taking dimensions of the actual thing one by one. So first of all, I'll see how much ground clearance I want to keep. Suppose this is very imaginary part. I mean, I'm not asking you to calculate anything. I'm not telling you to calculate anything. First of all, okay, you thought that, okay, the ground clearance will, GC will be 8 inches, suppose. The ground clearance is 8 inches. There is no engineering so far associated with the vehicle. All right. So as we see, the rule book says that the minimum wheelbase must be 40 inches. 40 inches, and according to that I'll decide my track width. This is the very preliminary part, the imaginary part, the consideration part. We haven't finalized anything, we haven't calculated anything. This is just for the sake of my sketch to be, visualized physically with a little more appropriate terms. So I'll ask my drivers, okay, how much height do you want, or how much is the height of my driver, so that I can, visualize his leg length, also his length of the foot of also. So this is how I'll decide the tentative dimensions of my vehicle. There is no engineering associated so far. Once you are satisfied with the dimensions, once you see that rule book is also satisfied, then comes the calculation part. Then comes, okay, this is how I will calculate the load on my wheels, like center of gravity's location, wheel, I mean, a lateral load transfer, longitudinal load transfer, this hard points of my suspension, where will they be, and everything comes after that. First of all, the visualization, and then after your rough work is done, you go for a dummy chassis model, and you make it with the PVC pipes. So that satisfies, like, okay, this is the engine compartment and engine is this big. So okay, this will be the engine will be accommodated inside the chassis safely and securely, and taking the uh, that event, disassemble event, into consideration. Okay, you have to keep the disassemble time maximum, the dismantling and assembly time maximum, minimum possible. And the serviceability, basically the serviceability should be maximum when you design the component. So this, if you see, is the engine component, engine compartment, this particular part, if you see. So this engine is successfully mounted inside this compartment on 5 mounting points. So what we did was, first of all, we took we selected the engine, which engine we will be using. As of now, the engine is the free choice, like 250 is the limit for engine. ये किसका कनेक्ट नहीं हुआ? Just hang on a moment, need to see. ये वाला है कि कौन सा वाला? इसमें टी लिखा हुआ है, इसमें राजा लिखा हुआ है। All right, sorry for the inconvenience. There was a registrant, he wasn't able to connect to the webinar. All right, so we were discussing that we took the dimensions of the engine. We physically located the mounting points, where exactly will the mounting points be, and then we designed the engine compartment exactly as per the requirement of the engine. So first of all, you have to decide the engine, which engine you will be using. Suppose you are using, earlier we were using Lifan engine. So I have the drawing of that Lifan engine, and with that drawing, if you can see this drawing, so this drawing specifies the location of the mounting. First, second, third. So basically there are 5 mounting points, one here, 2 here, and one over here and one over here. These two, 5 mounting points. So this is up to you how many mounting points you want to keep, and or how many mounting points the engine has. You just have to make sure that keeping the serviceability factor as high as possible, you have to design your components. So from here we see the disassemble event is the first priority when you are designing the vehicle, because it's not about the points only. 50 points disassemble carries, it's not about the points only, it's more about the engineering part. Suppose you are designing anything and it's welded, and it is supposed, in actual operation it is supposed to be removable, so it won't be, it won't be justified to weld that particular thing. So I have seen many teams welding the steering column permanently that it cannot be removed. Suppose if you have to replace the bearing placed at the bottom of the steering column, so how will you replace that? So serviceability is zero over there. That means your engineering is zero over there. And when anybody just observe your quad, when any inspector or any judge comes near to the quad, the first impression is he doesn't ask any questions on the first uh, time. He just sees the vehicle completely. He see, okay, how you have designed this, how smartly you have minimized the servicing time, or how easy it is for you to take the components out, or how smartly you have designed, or how smartly you have minimized the wastage of the material. All right, so moving next to the rule book. This is first criteria, the wheelbase and track width. Then comes the maximum vehicle dimensions. The maximum vehicle dimensions, the maximum width should be less than 62 inches, and maximum length should be less than 78 inches. When we talk about the maximum width and maximum length, we talk about end-to-end dimensions, the widest point along the width and the lengthiest points along the length. So it's about including the bodyworks, your bumpers, tires, everything. So the widest points uh, can be 62 inches away from each other. Next comes the ground clearance. This year, our orientation from the event are not only to challenge you on the track, but to see the speeds also. Because what people do in endurance is like, okay, till endurance, there are very few teams left on the track. So basically, people run the vehicle slowly, just in order to complete the endurance. So what we want to do this year is like, okay, there will be one tough track where you will be allowed to go slow, and there will be one fast track. The first, the breakdown of the endurance connected. The breakdown of the endurance basically is done to see speed as well as the thrill without losing the thrill of the event. So first event, The first endurance, it will go slow because the track will be hard. But the second endurance, it will ask the quads to run faster because the track will be a little easier and people can accelerate much on that track without fear of failures because the track will be a little easier as compared to the previous track. So ground clearance this year has been reduced to 6 inches. Now the center of gravity's location. First of all, it is many teams, almost every team calculate the center of gravity location, but how exactly you represent the center of gravity's location? Because when anybody see your vehicle, he should be able to visualize that, okay, this is the center of gravity and this is how your vehicle will be behaving on the track. So behaving on the track means there is a seesaw event in quad torque. If just I'll draw it for you. So seesaw is basically a big pin joint is over here, and your quad is challenged to climb over here on this seesaw platform. So as soon as you come here at this point, this seesaw bends down and the position of this becomes like this. So now the challenge for everybody is to successfully compete during this event. I have seen almost every team getting toppled because this is a little tricky one and a lot of engineering is associated here. Lot of engineering means how exactly your center of gravity is playing a role in your vehicle. Suppose it is in center, exactly at center, as low as possible. So basically when you start climbing, the center of gravity will start shifting rearward, and as soon as you come here and the seesaw starts coming down, the center of gravity will be starting to shift a little up front. So what will happen if it is more in front? If center of gravity is it is more in front, and you are somewhere over here when the seesaw started coming down, you are somewhere over here. So there are high chances that your vehicle will topple. And I I don't say this, don't go on my words, just see the videos available and you will see how many teams they topple in this particular test. And toppling in this test means failing a lot of things. You may fail your knuckles, you may fail your suspensions, steering, and the potential engine failures also. Sometimes there are teams those who toppled their vehicle, the vehicle completely rolled over, and they damaged some intake parts of the engine because of any reason. You cannot say because of what reason, that is a matter to research. So basically everything when you decide depends on the other factors that are given in the rule book. Suppose this is the center of gravity's location, it is not only the center of gravity's location that plays an important role. This is the stiffness of suspension also. If your front suspensions are too soft, that means you will be hitting somewhere here the front tires when as soon as you start coming. I'll draw it for you. As soon as you start coming, your front wheels are somewhere over here, and this is the suspension. If they are too soft, the suspensions are too soft, so it will start compressing. And as soon as you started coming down, the suspension will be almost entirely compressed and shifting the center of gravity in the front. So that is also one reason many teams topple. So it's not about gravity alone, it's about the suspension, it's about the geometry of suspension, it's about the placement of your driver on the vehicle, how exactly your driver is placed on the vehicle, how he is sitting, or how he is shifting his body's center of gravity to shift the center of gravity of the entire vehicle. So a lot of factors are associated. Okay, discuss these things in detail as we go into the technical discussion. As of now, we are discussing the rule book alone. So coming to the fuel tank part, I have seen many teams using the OEM fuel tanks taken from bikes. So one of the main challenge for you guys is to reduce the weight of the vehicle. At one moment you are using the Chromoly 4130, and at another moment you are using the OEM fuel tank, which weighs around 8 to 10 kgs roughly, without the fuel itself. So is it smart idea to use it? No. But and moreover, the fueling is unlimited times. You can do fueling unlimited times. The only condition for refueling is that the refueling will be done on particular refueling stations only. So you have to design the vehicle in a smart way that tells the fuel level inside the fuel tank, and the driver can stop after a couple of laps or after 1 hour or something like that. So suppose you got the 3 liters for the first attempt, then you will again get 3 liters, again 3 liters. So this is how you can manage. So basically this entirely depends upon the lot of considerations. The engineering is the most important part, but comes after your selections only. So if your selections are not appropriate, your engineering will not be justified automatically. So capacity of the fuel tank, as we have specifically mentioned, that the capacity can be kept up to 6 liter, not more than that. This is because of that reason only, like people use bigger fuel tanks. They are not necessary to be used, and unnecessarily you increase the weight on the vehicle. Now comes the ventilation. The fuel tank ventilation is required. I'll tell you one problem which we faced, that the engine was not starting up basically. So the team built the fuel tank by themselves, and they didn't provided any ventilation hole. So it is important for the carbureted engines to provide the ventilation system, so that the engine can suck up the fuel. So sometimes it happens because of the improper ventilation, that engine, the pump cannot suck the fuel. The engine is somewhere facing the lack of fuel supply. So this is why engine will show you poor performance. It may start, it may not give you the perfect performance. So ventilation is important. And then comes the fuel level indicator. As I told you, sometimes people people don't refill the fuel, and they just somewhere in the endurance, in the middle of the track, they stand and they call the team members that, okay, I need the fuel. No, that's not allowed actually. And if you finish the fuel tank, some fuel somewhere in the middle of the track, and you ask for the fuel, there is a penalty basically. So you will be provided with the fuel, but penalty, extra time will be added to your score. And then comes the driver seat. I have seen videos, not videos, it's actually I have seen real time. I have seen that drivers, they literally fall off the vehicle while attempting the kill the hill or seesaw or suspension. So this is about designing a proper seat for your driver that can withstand the dynamic forces, and as well as that offers a comfort to the driver sitting on the vehicle. So if you see the videos available on YouTube, you'll see a driver falling off the vehicle while attempting the seesaw. So basically the seat was a little inclined rearward, like this. Fuel tank and seat was something like this. So driver was sitting somewhere over here, and he always, while driving, he always was leaning backward, and when he jumped over the seesaw, he accidentally lost the grip on the handle and he was thrown out of the vehicle. So because it is a real risk for your driver and it may be very serious also. So designing the proper driver seat is mandatory. And if we see that the seat is not rigidly mounted, if it is loosened, so we just do not allow in technical inspection. So next come the thumb throttle. Now many of you would wonder, why thumb throttle? Why not the regular that OEM part, that throttle which is used in the bikes? So what happens when you're driving, no problems. When you are driving off-road, sometimes it happens that okay, you fell into a pit and accidentally you put a little higher force on the throttle. So what happens, in order to hold it strongly, you basically increase your holding force, the grip basically. So you hold the handle more tightly, and holding the handle more tightly, it twists the throttle automatically. So if it is the regular that is used in the bikes, that means you're going off-road, all the times you will be hitting pits, all the times you will be jumping over something. So there are chances that you will increase your grip, you will increase your holding force. So you will end up twisting the throttle and you will end up just making the accident more serious. So it's always better, it's not better now, it is a compulsion in quad torque that we use this thumb throttle. So what happens basically, when you hold the handle, if you are using the thumb throttle, mostly in case of accident, then you automatically lose your grip from the thumb throttle, because you have to remove your thumb from the throttle in order to hold the handle more rigidly, more strongly. So this is how you compensate this particular problem. Tires, entirely your choice. You have to choose the tires, which tire you want to use, but they must be off-road tires. There should not be the normal tires you used in the cars. The gear shifter again must be operated by the left foot. Mud guards, there must be proper mud guards in the vehicle. Fire extinguisher, two numbers of fire extinguishers, one on the vehicle and one with the crew member all the times when they escort the vehicle to any dynamic or static event. Then comes the foot step and foot protector. It's observed when foot when you turn the vehicle, the tire hits the foot step. So there must be a proper and sufficient gap that is given in the rule book. The gap should be at least 2 inches between the tire and the foot step. So this gap must be maintained all the times. All the times, I mean, when you turn the vehicle to extreme ends, there must be minimum 2 inches gap between the tire and the frontmost part of the foot step. Okay, this part is done. Suppose I'll just tell you what I'm trying to say. Suppose this is your tire and somewhere over here is your foot protector attached to the chassis. This part I'm talking about. This particular part I'm talking about. Somewhere over here the tire will be attached. So when you turn the tire to rearward, to inner side, so tire will be coming near to the foot step. Now, if the driver is driving, so obviously his foot will be trying to go out sometimes because the track is uneven. It's not just have to sit all the times. He just have to, you know, sit safely. So you have to provide additional protection over here so that the tire in even in accident also doesn't touch the driver's foot. Basically, you have to provide a protection somewhere over here. Hope you got my point. So this is what the foot step and foot protector say. I will be able to show you many designs if you ask me, and then that can be asked after this session is about to end. And I conclude the session from my side. You can ask your questions, and I'll be able to show you several designs also, like how people design the foot protector, how they basically design the foot step also. So sometimes what people do is people use the metallic pipes or the sheets to provide the base of the foot step. So this is not recommended. You can always do that, but that adds weight to the vehicle. So what is recommended, what we advise is that you design a frame like this frame, and you provide the harness. You can provide the harness that if you see the Polaris ATVs or any professionally built ATVs, you will see that harnesses are provided, like the one, if you recall seat belts from your cars. So you will see that is a harness, sort of a harness. So you can use that thing to just, you know, make a net sort of arrangement at the bottom of the footstep, and also design one vertical support to provide this. And over here also you can provide the net arrangement, the harness arrangement. This is your foot step, this part, and this part is your foot protector. So if you see, Karan, can you come here? So just try to sit over the vehicle or stand. So if you see, I have Karan with me, and since it's lockdown, so he just managed to come like this only. So don't go on his look. So okay, if you see his foot, it's resting over here. So when I turn the tire inside, so it will be like the tire is like this. Now he's turning the tire. So basically tire is coming a little inward. And now if his leg or his foot moves outside of this envelope, so he'll be in serious attempt of injury. So now your job is to provide an additional support from here to here, that neither the tire nor his foot comes outside of this envelope, and he makes himself safe. So that this gap, it should be always either 2 inches or more than 2 inches, not less than 2 inches. Yeah, that's it. I'll call you again if I need. All right, moving next in the list comes the toe point, front and rear. See, when people confuse themselves between toe point and drop point, these two things are separate. Tow point is to tow the vehicle. Suppose your vehicle is stuck somewhere. I have a towing mechanism with me. Most preferably, I have a Jeep. Suppose this is your vehicle. Suppose this is your vehicle. I want you to place a towing mechanism. The design, this is given in basically you have to weld an MS flat part, as the dimensions these are given. So one in the front and one in the rear. So this should be that provide a hinge support over here, so that it can rotate, at least it can rotate 90 to 120 degrees, because when I attach the towing mechanism, the alignment of this particular rope or whatever the towing mechanism I have, it is not necessary that this will be as per the design you have. I may have a little higher tow point attached to my Jeep, or you may have a little lower tow point attached to your Jeep, to your quad. So if your towing mechanism, it is rigid, it doesn't rotate about the axis, this axis, if it doesn't rotate about this axis, so that means the towing mechanism will try to lift up your vehicle and ultimately failing this particular joint. Thank you. So it's always better to provide a hinge support over here, so that whatever the alignment angle my towing mechanism requires, that can be done. So the best part, the best way to provide the hinge mechanism is, suppose this is the frontmost member of your quad on which you want to install this tow point. So weld two hollow pipes over here, the diameter whatever your choice is, you can do that. I won't say anything about that. So weld two pipes over here, and the same diameter, this is hollow basically from inside, so it's like 1 2, okay, and over here is your frontmost chassis, where you are installing the tow point mechanism, and this is your tow point for the design. So the same pipe you add it over here, and now when you assemble, insert it over here, and this will be like this. So it can at least 180 degrees. This basically the hinge that you install in your doors, gates. So the same hinge arrangement you have to you can use it here. Otherwise, whatever you want, you can use. You can use a hook arrangement, but that may add basically that may add some weight. But the design that is given over here is light possible. Okay, now rear view mirrors. Rear view mirrors, it's not just for the sake of rule that you have to use rear view mirrors. The rear view mirror should show the objects behind you. The driver basically should see the quads coming from the behind, and you must be able to, just not leaning like that and seeing what is coming from my behind. So it's about just in the normal sitting posture, you can see the objects from the far away. Okay, now reverse horn and indicators strictly prohibited. Reverse light and alarm. Sometimes people use reverse gear. First of all, yes, you can always use reverse gear. There are engines that allows you to use reverse gear in those engines, and teams have come up with the reverse gear ideas in the engines that are not having reverse gear also. So it's like the benefits of reverse gear in quad is like, okay, you are stuck somewhere where you need to take the vehicle back, and it happens at every walk of time during the dynamic events that your vehicle has stuck. Now the driver is supposed to come down and push the vehicle physically, but there are many drivers, those who are not physically that capable that they can push the vehicle, they can lift up the vehicle. So in that case, if you have the reverse gear, it it's proven to be the best help during that event. All right, now comes the brake. So basically the brakes and their efficiency, it's the most important part when the vehicle is running. When the vehicle is running means when the vehicle is undergoing any dynamic event like the brake test, acceleration test. It's not about the brake test only. It's about the brake must be good throughout the event, in every dynamic event. So all the four wheels must be operated. All the brakes must be installed on all the four wheels, and brake wire is prohibited, and that's all. Yes, brake wire is prohibited. Hydraulic brakes. All right. Yes, there was a rule earlier in the rule book. There was a rule that there should be only one control to the brake systems. Suppose you have four brakes and two controls, like the bike has. Rear wheels, front wheels. So the brake mechanism just a moment. If you have two different mechanisms acting to operate the brakes, so during the brake test, the rule book says that all the four wheels must lock themselves after the brakes are applied at the same time. It's not like front wheel stopped first and then the rear wheels. No, it's not like that. All the four wheels, they must stop in straight line stability without losing the control. Without losing the control. So this basically is a little difficult when you use two different controls. So I'm just trying to draw a schematic for you. Okay. This is one wheel. This is one wheel front part. The rear wheels. Okay. So you have a brake system installed in such a way that the front wheels are operated with the handle, the hand lever, and the rear brakes are operated with the foot operated pedal. Okay. So sometimes it happens that the driver is not synchronized with the vehicle and there is a fraction of second difference or delay, you can say, in the synchronization. What happened? I pressed the front brakes first and then I pressed the rear brakes. So it will give me time delay that the front brakes will be stopped, the front wheels will be stopped first and then the rear wheels will be stopped. But the invigilator, the inspector standing over there, he will observe a time delay. Okay, the all the four wheels didn't stop in a in the same time. So he will give you a DNF for the for that particular attempt. So your job is to design a brake system in such a way that all the wheels they stop in straight line stability without losing the control, and at the same time they stop or they lock. So this, there is a rule where the rule book says the brake pedal shall be designed to withstand a force of 2 kilonewton without any failure of the paddle box. So basically, there are chances when the technical inspector he will stand up on your vehicle and he'll just literally push the vehicle, the kick the pedal just to check whether the big brake pedal that is installed is capable of withstanding the force, because the driver when he drives the vehicle in dynamic events he literally can't feel his foot because the boot that he's wearing doesn't allow him to move his ankle. It's the complete foot he can now either lift it up or he can kick it from that foot. So it's really essential for you guys to design the foot the brake pedal that is capable of withstanding these many forces. Now comes the brake over travel switch. The brake over travel switch is something that kills the ignition in case of the brake failure. And when can the brake failure happen? Brake failure can happen anytime during the event. It doesn't specify the moment where the brakes will be failing, but as soon as the switch senses the brake failure, it will give a signal to the master to the kill switch, and it will kill off this ignition. So basically, it's like this is your brake pedal. This is your brake pedal, and somewhere over here, the kill switch is placed. That's directly attached to the ignition. Okay, so you all know that the fluid allows a limited when the brakes are working fine. So it will be having some normal travel, the foot, the brake pedal, it will be having some normal travel. But in case of the brake failure, what will happen? The travel of the pedal, it will increase, and the increase in travel will push the brake over travel switch, and ultimately that will kill the ignition. So this is how you have to use the brake over travel switch. Now the problem in brake over travel switch is like this is the part where you have to install the brake pedal basically. So the brake over travel switch will automatically come down. Over here, suppose this is my brake over travel switch at the bottom of this part. Yeah, over here. And over here is the brake pedal. So I don't want the brake over travel switch to be damaged because of some obstacles. Those may come during my dynamic events. So you have to secure the brake over travel switch in such a way that the operation also is made easy, and it is safe to install the brake over travel switch in this particular region. So sometimes people, just in order to make the brake over travel switch a little safer, they replace the position and they use link. Like, just hang on a moment, I'll show you that condition also. Suppose this is a brake pedal, and somewhere over here I'm asking you to put this brake over travel switch. So in normal condition, it will not be pressing the brake over travel switch. The pedal will not be pressing the brake over travel switch. This is the normal condition. But when the brake fails, it will start traveling a little more distance than it used to. So it will push the brake over travel switch and in the ignition. But since it is coming in an unsafe region where any object lying on the track, since it is an off-road track, so any object like wooden blocks or stones, they may hit the brake over travel switch and it will not be working anymore. So either you have to make it safer by providing certain arrangements, or you have to